All right, everybody, we're back once again. Welcome back to 6 Plus Plus. It's Data Slate Day. There's slates, there's data, there's all that good stuff. We're having a nice time. We're reading through some rules. We're getting excited. It's Tom, very low to men here, back with the lovely Jack. And I'm very excited because this is obviously Ork time now. We've talked through the Tower. The Tower have some experimental guns, but the Orks can also experiment. Welcome to people joining us in the chat. Let us know what you're up to. Let us know what you're thinking about this detachment. I know there's quite a spicy reaction already to this one. And everyone's here to ponder because, yeah, as I was saying in our main 6 Plus Discord, it's time to ponder some Ork rules. Orks are pensive souls. They love to sit and think and wonder about things. And I feel like this is a very nuanced and subtle set of rules as well. So I think for the ponderous Ork, there's a lot to be had here.
Warrior poets, one you might call them. Philosopher kings.
Exactly that. Very much so. Yeah, exactly. Like the kings of old. They're very much in that build. They are. There's depth. There's layers to them, and I think as
like an onion.
Like an onion. Maybe not so much with this detachment, but we will see. So what we're going to be looking into is the rules. We're going to have a read through. We will ponder on some possible builds and possible directions for you as well. And I think it's fair to say this is a very nice detachment. I think there's a lot going on here as well. Orks have had a funny old time in 10th where they got a very cool book. It was a little bit propped up by Mega Knobs. They got some nerfs. A few of the detachments never really made it out the gate as sort of. I think a couple of detachments were perhaps a little bit too keyword locked, a little bit too restrictive, and didn't quite allow enough to work. But they've always been good. Like they've been good the whole way through. They were good in the index. They're good in Warhorde. They've had moments with other detachments like Bully Boys, and obviously most recently at Grotmas, not very long ago, they got a wonderful shooting detachment, which took them up a level with tank busters, flash kits, these kinds of things. So it may surprise you to see that what Games Workshop has decided is they should shoot some more. And they've in fact given them a detachment where the name literally tells them to go and shoot more. It is more Dakka. It is leaning once again into the ranged facet of the Ork culture. Of all of the Ork manias, few are as widespread as the love of heavy firepower, temporarily united by a shared love of loud and destructive Dakka. Hordes of similarly obsessed Orks can produce storms of killing fire capable of felling even the most heavily armoured of enemies. So Orks love guns. It's a lesser known thing about them. They absolutely love guns, love lots of shots, and it's a little bit terrifying when Orks get shooting rules. I don't know how you feel about this, Jack, as an initial start point.
Yeah, I mean, it's always we're at the part of the edition where Orks get to be good at shooting, right? So
yeah,
we're at that point. I guess a couple of things to keep in mind for this is there were some points nerfs to relevant units for Ork shooting.
Okay.
I think it was a 10-point nerf to the shock attack gun mech and
Sure.
15-point nerf to the 6-man units of is it Breaker Boys? Is that what they're called?
Oh, the tank busters.
The range. Tank busters. So obviously they're shooting units that you need to. They've gone up in points, so that's worth knowing.
Probably fair enough, right? Because they've been seeing a lot of use in tactical, and I imagine they'll see a lot of use here. But yeah, that's very useful context. Thank you. So let's dive into it. Let's have a look at the detachment rule first and foremost. We have Dakka. Orks have no real concept of ammunition preservation, instead tending to hold the trigger down until their ammunition runs dry or the weapon falls apart in their hands. I love that for them. And this is, as we've just seen with the tower detachment, simple but effective. And I think this is a little bit more in terms of raw output. During your shooting phase, ranged weapons equipped by Ork infantry and Ork walker models from your army have the sustained hits 2 ability, crucially in your shooting phase, right? So that's not an Overwatch thing, but you're going to have sustained hits 2. And then whilst the wire is active for your army, ranged weapons equipped by Ork infantry and Ork walker models have the assault ability. What do you reckon to this, Jack?
Yeah, I mean that's just really solid, right?
It's just really good.
Sustained hits 2 is effectively like a +2 to hit, which is also hit on 3s. Why not? But obviously it's way more swingy, which is more orky, as we like to see. Also, just worth knowing, I have not read this at all. I'm completely blind.
Yeah, we're coming in fresh here, right? So and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think there's a lot here. If we're thinking about it, I think sustained hits 2 is incredibly powerful. Orks have a lot of very solid weapons in their sort of rule set. There's a lot of rockets. There's a lot of AP2 damage 3 guns flying about. There is essentially an accuracy issue is the main thing that keeps it down. Sustained hits 2 is really, really powerful. Now, it's very good on anywhere you can smooth out the accuracy even more. So looters spring to mind with the reroll hits if the target's on objectives. So I think being able to get additional accuracy out of looters is really good, and looters suddenly start looking like a unit you might see amongst the tank busters as well. And then walkers are an interesting one. Things like killer cans, things like, I don't think the Death Dread necessarily, but and potentially even things like Gorkanauts. Those get pretty funny with this. Now, obviously, the killer thing. Is that I think Dreadmob does give some really nice efficiency smoothing out, especially for the walkers already. So I think there's going to be interesting seeing how that compares. But I think the fact that you can have really shooty orc infantry running about and also potentially get some juice out of your walkers feels really good to me. I think probably based on units currently doing the rounds, the orc infantry are going to be the most excited about this, because that's already the way the orc builds are going. It's infantry, it's transports, it's fast. But I'll be very interested to see if someone gets some killer cans or some Gorkanauts or some Death Dreads into the action to take advantage of the Sustain 2 as well.
Yeah, so it's a weird one, right? Because you already have the orc walker detachment, so to see things singled out. But I think the more reason it's singled out is they probably gave it everything at first and then realized, oh wait, hang on, there's a bunch of orc models that were very problematic last edition when they were competing. So let's just take that away by getting rid of the vehicles. But yeah, the Gorkanaut and the Morkanaut were the two that came to mind immediately when I saw Walker. That's just something that's going to be really strong on them. The Grot Walkers are effectively hitting on 2s with this weapon, so with this rule, so really solid for them.
And the ability to be advancing, shooting, and charging in the war is huge for them. It's a really, really big buff. I think obviously those kinds of units have just basic placement and movement issues. They're not quick, they're chunky, but actually this is saying, let's see if just absolutely juicing up the output makes you willing to deal with that and crack on. And I think killer cans are a really interesting unit. Like, they hit very hard. And they have a real wealth of volume shooting especially into blast targets. So I think this may well, at least certainly, I think for the orc connoisseur, people will dabble with this and see what happens. And I'll be really interested to see. It's just seeing if the raw output is going to push those kind of clunky units over the edge, and I really hope it does.
I can see you taking like a unit of these, right? That's
exactly.
And not read the rest of the detachment, but
well, as we'll see, there's another crucial trick in here which is going to make a whole bunch of options very, very viable for the orcs, and it's a tool that they've not had in any of their detachments that I think is really, really good. We'll get to it. So let's go into the enhancements. We've got the Gobshot Thunderbus. Requiring an entire chest of teeth to be loaded into its breech before each shot. The Gobshot Thunderbus is Worky Gubbins plates its unconventional ammunition in gold before firing it in an inescapable cone of fanged death. Not only can this madcap weapon sweep away swathes of enemies with every shot, it also fires a literal fortune in teeth every time, proclaiming its owner's obscene wealth in the process. So this is an model only, and it gives ranged weapons equipped by the bearer devastating wounds and hazardous. So very spicy on a shock attack gun, where you can potentially be having some rerolls to hit. You can also, spoilers, be having some rerolls to wound. That, once you get dev wounds and las cannons, that gets pretty spicy, right? So you're going to have, there was an era in 8th edition where the shock attack gun was a very feared thing, and I feel like it may well be again. I've got some shouts in the chat for Stomper Stonks and Triple Morkanaut and Max Flash Kits. Yeah, Flash Kits. I mean, Flash Kits do love this all as well. I was coming to them later because it's like they already have sustain. They're not juicing up as much as some of the others, but hey, more toys is good. Next up, we have Dead Shiny Shooters, rumoured to have been made by Big Mech Buzzgob. The Dead Shiny Shooters are a set of multi-barreled brutes packed full of Dakka. The guns kick out a deafening storm of hot lead, much to the enjoyment of the orcs pulling the triggers. Their volume of fire so great that even the most inaccurate shooter can land a respectable number of hits. That gives the ranged weapons in the bearer's unit rapid fire 1.
Remember when I said I really like all the techno gobbledygook in the Tau one? Yeah, we don't necessarily need to keep doing that for the Orc one. That's not my speed, but
I'm quite enjoying it. But it's a bit of because they throw random like Orc spelling in. You're like, whoa! I'm always on the verge of falling over. So this one, I mean, rapid fire 1. So you're gonna have essentially a really, really shooty Orc unit there. Even more additional range fire coming out of that unit. I feel like you just take it. I think some shock attack somewhere just handing out additional shots to the unit, that's just really, really brutal.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of units you're going to put this on, again, looters are a great shot because they're really long range, so it's easy to get inside that 24. I feel like tank busters really like that because +1 shot on them is very valuable.
Yes.
I'm sure all player will tell you how much they like shooting at the blast targets.
Yeah.
And then flash gates are another obvious one. They just like the shots, so there's 10 of them, right? So they get a lot of benefit from that.
Completely. And it just, again, when you factor that with the fact you've already got Sustain 2 coming in, it's a massive, massive boost in output.
Yeah.
And you can see how the flash skits, tank busters, looters, that's a lot of volume shooting coming out of all these different Ork infantry. Really, really nasty. Next up, we have targeting squigs. Jack's told me not to read the bits, so I'm going to read the bits. The flashiest skits have specially bred targeting squigs mounted atop their favourite shooters. It's not certain whether these creatures actually aid the bearer or not, as they cling for dear life atop their perches, which are inevitably the biggest shooter the owner has, as nothing aids accuracy like firing so many shots that you just can't miss. This is a simple one. Again, Ork model. Each time a model in the bearer's unit makes a ranged attack, add 1 to the hit roll. So, Jack, how accurate are these Orks now?
Pretty good. Basically hitting on 2s. I mean, that's just...
It's just good, right?
It's just good, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just really good.
Fuck it, right?
I'm glad we did the Tau one first.
No. I mean, it's whenever you get shot by Ork shooting, right? You're like, kind of... It's always, it doesn't matter how many times it happens, you always end up getting surprised by the volume of it. And then if they high roll and get like a low, like 50% hits, you're like, oh, this is gonna be nasty. And now it's gonna be like, okay, now I'm picking up more hits than I had shots, and it's like you already had 50 shots. So
yeah,
pretty terrifying.
Anthony Young's made a good spot in the chat. No one will be able to give these enhancements to the flash skits. That's completely correct, because Bad Ruck is Legends and Met Captain is only in tactical. So it'll be the looters and the tank busters, I guess, are the primary beneficiaries. But hey, that's not bad. That in looters you've got your AP1 damage 2 volume. In tank busters you've got your AP2 damage 3 volume. Those are both fantastic things. And then the shock attack guns, which I guess are the obvious caddies for these, just are good guns in their own right? Just pretty dangerous. Ork shooting does, like Tau, have a bit of a strength issue, in as much as it doesn't get up beyond 9 a lot of the time. But with loads of rerolls, loads of volume, it's just still going to push through an awful lot of damage, I think. Finally, we have Zog off and eat Dakka. There's no point in having the loudest and flashiest gun if the gits don't let you fire them. This Ork will even go so far as to avoid a punch-up in order to fire his snazzy weapons. So we've got more of a cunning but brutal variety Ork here. And the bearer's unit is eligible to shoot in a turn in which it fell back. I'll be honest, I like all the others more because I think making them dead is better than falling back from them. I don't know what you think, Jack.
Yeah, that's probably the one that you don't take, right? I mean, Orks are generally fairly solid in a fight anyway. Speaking as a Tau player, everything's solid in a fight to me. But it's you're not too worried. You're mostly like tank busters, right? They're all strength 5. They all got a bunch of attacks. Like they don't mind too much being in combat, so it's not that bad.
Completely.
So
yeah. And I think we're seeing a world here where you've got multiple shock attack gun caddies for all of these. They all make their units more dangerous. And they all make themselves more dangerous, and it couples with the detachment rule incredibly well. And you'd be forgiven, viewers, for thinking, well, this is just a ranged detachment then. And based on the enhancements of the army rule, you'd be right. But it's not. There's more to come, because obviously you're going to have some points left over after you've jammed all your looters and tank busters. So the question is, well, what are you going to do then? Maybe you'll go for stompers or Gorkanauts or killer cans, other things. Maybe you'll go for some melee as well. Let's have a look. So if we get into the stratagems, they immediately reassert themselves with Orks is still Orks. Even though they may be armed with the flashiest shooters, when enemies stray within arm's reach, an Ork's first and strongest instinct is to use their snazzy shooter as a cudgel and bash their foe to a pulp. So this is a fight phase buff straight out the gate. Ork unit from your army that's not been selected to fight until the end of the phase. Each time a model in your unit makes an attack that targets an enemy unit, reroll a wound roll of 1. If that enemy unit is within range of an objective marker, you can re-roll the wound roll instead. So just turning on being a rubric or being a GC occultist in melee for your Orks. Pretty powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think every Ork player's trousers just got a bit tighter with that one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very Orks, very on brand for Orks, right? Like you shooting detachment your first your first stratagem is a reroll to wound in close combat. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing that Orcs want, right? It's
Yeah.
pretty much exactly the thing that Orcs want.
Yeah.
Is
I
rerolls
think
to
I
wound in
think
close
in
combat.
general, Orc combat outside of Warhorde is a little lackluster at times, just because the sustain from Warhorde and the lethal crit fives, all that stuff. That's what takes them over the edge to the really, really dangerous places. But rerolls to wound will go a long way on a whole bunch of their units, and again, it helps them punch up into things. Things like knobs that come in at sort of strength 10, suddenly punching up very violently into the really hard targets, I think is really nice. And I think it's just a really powerful strat. It's a great tool to have. And again, what the overall vibe I'm getting from this detachment is that there is going to be a sort of default wall of gun involved, but actually you're going to have a lot of agency to choose what your kind of pushy combat options in the detachment are as well. And you can very much have those and make them work. And one of the big reasons for that we'll get to in a moment, which is get stuck in, lads. Your command phase. Oh, sorry. Jack will want me to read out the fluff text. So,
Please do.
lashing out with ferocious blows and bellowing loud enough to burst eardrums, the biggest orc persuades his lads to fight even harder. Oh, the biggest orc present. There you go. I stumbled over it. I finally fell. I was going to fall at some point. Basically,
it wasn't even an awkward.
I know. It's just standard. In your command phase, you pick an orc unit. Until your next command phase, the war is active for your unit, even if you have already called a war this battle. And designer's note, this means that any abilities that are in effect whilst the war is active for your army will be in effect for that unit. So just turning on the war. Now, there's a couple of obvious big applications for this. One of them is Ghazghkull, because Ghazghkull has his lethal hits aura. He's got a bunch of buffs that he hands out to units around him during the war. You can switch that on. That's very, very powerful. I think there's obviously the application in terms of getting the advanced charge, getting the extra attacks, getting all the good stuff there. Really, really good. Mega Knobs love this because they can turn their Feel No Pain back on. Zodgrod and his little grot horde loves this because you can shove him nice and early and have the invuln up, which makes him incredibly obnoxious to deal with. So you've got a bunch of applications here. It can be a tar pit. It can be jamming some orc boys, getting the invuln on when you need it. It can be amping up a sort of force multiplier, or it can just be more damage where you need it, right? I think this is not something we've seen before, and it just radically alters the complexion of how you can play an orc army. Because obviously, orc games, and we've all played them, orc games are so defined by when the war is and the sort of aftermath and the cleanup and other things. Being able to sort of mini war, spike a little bit in different places at different times, or being able to get some of those killer buffs back on, feels extremely powerful to me. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, playing against this, you've got to now, even after the war's been called, you have now got to assume that any unit in the opponent army could have the war in the next turn. So it is notably in your command phase.
Yes.
Again, not the battle round thingy. Excuse me. So you can't reactively have it for shooting or anything. It is more of an offensive thing. That's pretty cool. But you have to assume that the opponent's going to be able to advance and charge, have an invuln, have any the war bosses getting all those extra attacks and stuff.
I hadn't
think
thought
it's
of that.
attacks and strength. I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You've got to assume that that's just going to be there in their command phase because any unit could have it until it's used.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and it's a build around situation. You're not going to have this everywhere, but it's something where if you've got a few different options across the lines to take advantage of it, you're going to feel pretty good off the back of that. And I say it definitely takes something like Ghazghkull up. I think Ghazghkull feels very very good. Sure. If you can turn on his buffs and the defenses on his Mega Knobs unit over and over, that's very very good. And just I think it's. You've got to think about what this is really switching on, and it's a strat that is essentially switching on advance and charge, invuln, strength attacks, and force multiplying buffs in one. So, and it's one CP. So that's a very very powerful tool.
That probably could have been 2 CP, and you'd still use it. Right?
It may well be 2 CP one day. I could see it, and it's got to be among the most powerful tools in the game. Frankly, for all the buffs that you get, the package that you're getting there, and the flexibility you've got to apply it. So really, really good. Obviously, and for this detachment especially, you're also turning on assault. effectively for a shooting unit. So if you want to use it to just buff up the advanced shoot charge effect of your key shooting units, it works as well. But I'm definitely seeing a lot of these strats in terms of the shooting just feels like it's already really good. So let's play around with the front lines and the combat and the other things that are causing mayhem ahead of them. Next up, we have huge show-offs. The pilots of the biggest Orky war machines are prone to showing off when the Dakka starts flying. After all, they have a reputation to uphold. This is a command phase. You are selecting one Ork Walker unit, excluding killer cans, boo, from your army. Until the start of your next command phase, improve your unit's move, leadership, and objective control characteristics by 1, and each time the model in your unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hit roll. What are we thinking, Jack?
Yeah, really solid. Obviously, if this is on killer cans, they'll be hitting on 3s with sustain 2. That'd be ridiculous. So it's probably good that that's not in there. But yeah, I mean, again, what is the Walker model with the most firepower and attacks that you can put this on? Is a Gorgonaut or a Morkanaut. So obviously that one springs to mind. But yeah, I mean, it's not even bad on like Death Dread, right?
Death Dread's pretty dangerous with this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it makes them way more reliable. So it's just solid. And again, it's one of those. It's your command phase one, so it can be used to flip objectives before primary is scored. So that's just that's a tool you got to watch out for now.
100%. Yeah, so I think it's again just super strong. We're seeing, I say orcs because of grots have good CP generation, so they usually have CP flying around. So I think they're definitely going to be in a pretty nice place coming out of this. The move leadership OC, none of that's bad either. I am sad you can't put it on killer cans because I do want killer cans that literally just absolutely delete everything in the world. That's a perfectly reasonable. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to want, right? For them, that's the first exercise of restraint we've seen in this detachment so far, by the way. So let's put that on record.
It's not really the Orks MO, is it?
No, it's really not. It's not what they're about at all. All right, moving it over to long uncontrolled bursts. Battle tactics stratagem. When facing off against sneaky gits who like to lurk in cover, most orcs believe the most effective strategy is to fire off so many bullets that something is bound to hit the target. That sounds about right. Start of your shooting phase, one orc character model from your army. You pick an enemy unit within 18. Until the end of the phase, weapons equipped by orc models from your army, so that's army-wide, have the ignores cover ability while targeting that unit. It's pretty good.
I didn't see that one. Sorry, let me just.
It's basically an 18-inch character can strip cover from a unit for the whole army.
Oh yeah, and it applies to the unit that it's currently shooting as well, because most of those are, after you shoot, the other units don't get cover, but you get it for yourself as well. So that's really strong.
I think it's just really nice. There's a lot of AP2, AP1 shooting in orcs, so as soon as cover's taken off, that gets really, really, really violent.
Yeah. What's really nice about that as well is it's not locked to. So a lot of these ignore cover strats or unit strip cover strats are you use it on the unit that is shooting, right? This one is any orc character. It looks like get it. So you could use it on like a war boss.
It can be a combat unit that's going in.
Yeah, exactly. And then that will strip cover for all the other stuff. So that's really good. It's much more. There's way more use cases for that one.
And you're not having to commit as much or expose as much to get it right.
Because a lot of time when you use that strat, you feel like, I've shot the first unit, and the unit's half dead. Okay, I get ignore cover on it, but you're not really getting the full value out of the ignore cover there.
I completely agree.
But you're always going to get the full value out of it here. Because you don't even have to damage the unit, so it's not like they can strip casualties to produce what you can see.
Yeah, you can tee up a very big single activation, and looters in particular will love this with the other buffs they have, just because that AP1 suddenly is going to stack up. Next up, we have special shells. Nothing helps a round punch through armor better than stuffing it full of extra propellant. Okay, nice. And this is another shooting buff, one Orcs army that's not been selected to shoot. Till the end of the phase, each time a model in your unit makes a ranged attack that targets the closest eligible unit within 18, you can get a boost of AP by 1. So another just useful buff. It just takes the guns up another level. You can apply it to any of the vehicles. It's pretty scary.
That's the same rule as the flash gates get, right? +1 AP against closest target. Or is it +1 shot? I'm trying to remember which
I
one it
think
is.
they get an extra shot. I think they use but let's double check that. We'll just have a look. Flash gets go up to 4 attacks when they're firing at the closest target.
Right, okay.
But this would take them to strength 6, AP 2, damage 2, which is
because my initial thought here
nice.
is a unit getting out of a truck and then using this be really solid, or the or coming in from reserve, or like rapid ingressing in on a side edge and using that. That seems like it'd be really solid. Because again, there's units there. Like again, we've said them several times. The looters AP is kind of like a low side, a downside of the looters. But AP2, AP2 is like that perfect breakpoint, especially if you get ignore cover, where you can put stuff on invols always.
Completely.
So that's kind of like the most efficient amount of AP you can have.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there are not Orcs shooting typically has downsides. I'm not feeling at this stage in the read through like there are many left at this point in terms of the options available. They'd already crept up on the AP front, I think, with the new units they got and some of the additional buffs and tricks and tools they got in the tank busters and breaker boys. So Orcs in general had a very defined set of limitations at the start of the edition. It feels like those are starting to drop off, and this detachment's not having them. So we've got one more, which is called that Dakka ? In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has shot, you pick an Orcs unit from your army that had one or more of its models destroyed as a result of the attacking unit's attacks. That unit can then shoot as if it were your shooting phase, but must target only that enemy unit when doing so, and can only do so if that enemy unit is an eligible target. That is sensational on something like looters with the massive long range, because you just can't shoot them without getting shot back. It's also really nasty on tank busters as well.
Any of the 2-wound Orks, Flash gets as well, they're really gonna like that.
Because, it's just brutal. Like if you think of your sort of MSU type armies that want to chip away at units like that, it's horrible. It's really, really good. And in a world where a lot of armies are switching off Overwatch, you can kill them this way instead. So that's reassuring. I think that feels phenomenally powerful. So, I mean, in terms of rule set, this feels probably better than Tactical Brigade. I don't know what you think, Jack. I think.
I mean, it's got less utility. And reliability from like the reroll charges, and there's a lot of like in tactical there's a lot of rerolls for stuff, reroll hits. You can stealth stuff to make yourself more defensive. Like it's more, as you would expect, more flexible and more reliable. But this one definitely has a wider breadth of tools available to you.
Yes.
The full rerolls to wound in close combat in the shooting detachment is a bit of a weird one. Like I'm not quite sure why that's thrown in there.
Yeah.
I get it.
Having that and the WAR turn on, it's just like it's really big, I think.
Yeah, this is kind of everything you could ever want in an orc detachment. Which
I would agree.
Which from a design space, I'm not sure if that is necessarily the best thing. I'm sure it'll be really fun for orc players to have. Certainly in the short term. I think maybe a couple months down the line, they might be thinking, well, there's no point in playing any of the other detachments. Why do we have them?
I think that's the risk.
That would be the risk. That being said, there's lots of good stuff to be seen here. Buffing the walkers is pretty cool. Like there's, I was trying to think. I was like, what are the other walkers that? I'm like, oh yeah, the Stomper.
Yeah.
Like you could. I mean, it's 800 points. It's not worth its points in any really like sense of the word. But it does have a lot of guns, and
it really does.
Yeah, and making that thing hit on 2s with like strength 24, AP 5, damage 10. That's quite good.
And the thing with the orc big vehicles of the big walkers is that they can put all the gun infantry inside themselves. So you've got them walking around, and then you've got the looters inside the walkers, and it's like that's a lot, right? I'm curious to see I think we saw with Dreadmob that even giving very wild output buffs to the walkers doesn't really take them mainstream. That detachment was solid, but we've not seen it really much. And when we have, a lot of the builds have lent into looters, flash kits, tank busters, etc., which is it's where I think this will end up. And I think the reason it will end up there is because the War buff and the reroll wounds buff just gives you so much play with Orc melee anyway.
Yeah, I think Orcs' biggest problem, in terms of like breaking into the competitive scene, is that none of the top competitive players play Orcs, like as a regular army. Basically, in the UK, we have Brian Sipe, and that's basically it.
No one's given them a good shake in terms at all.
I think there's results in. I can only think, like, if I think of like the US, I can think of maybe like one Orc player. Forgive me, I've forgotten his name. He's one of the US players. He does a stat check podcast, and I've completely forgotten his name off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, so there's very little competitive innovation going on for Orcs in general, which I think is what results in them not being super seen on.
I agree.
Like this is borderline good enough to get people to switch, I think.
I think you're right. I think we will see. I think this is one people will chase onto without a doubt.
But hopefully, fingers crossed, we've managed to get away from that a lot in 10th edition because the release cycle is so fast, and the buff and the changes coming every 3 months avoids that. So hopefully that will be the case. That being said, Orcs are a very cool army to have on the table, and I will always advocate for more variety of armies out there. So I think this is a good thing. I think definitely in the short term, this is going to be a really cool detachment for both Orc players and non-Orc players. 6 months down the line, if it's exactly the same, maybe it won't be.
I think that's right.
This is great. For now, I think this is awesome.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I'll be interested to see what levers they pull with it and what adjustments they make. As I say, I think it's a very cool thing. We'll have to see where the power lands. Ultimately, it's going to depend what else the slate is doing, and we're still picking our way through that. We don't know exactly what else is out there in the game. Tactical's been interesting because although it's been evidently very good and very strong, it's not dominated. It's not been the complete top of the field. But this, in terms of just raw output, this feels very, very scary. And the fact that it can reach out and touch you with a Y unit whenever it wants, it solves what in theory a shooting detachment's weakness would be. It doesn't have that, right? It's if anything, it can get more consistency out of a few combat units across a game than even Warhorde can, because those units drop off after they're committed, whereas this can just keep rolling with one or two big melee brick type units. So very interested to see, but yeah, this looks very strong.
I think armies for this, just thinking of like composition, what their armies are going to look like. I think you're gonna probably max out on looters. I think that's
surely really 30 looters. Yeah.
And shock attack gun guys are probably good things. I obviously tank busters are still great even with their points increase. Remember, guys, points don't actually mean anything. So they're really good. I don't actually think flash kits are that good.
No, maybe in MSU just as trading or like a throwaway at the start.
They're okay. The problem that they have is when they're in transport, they don't get the sustain 2. And obviously they don't have any like characters to buff them up, which is kind of a thing in 10th edition you kind of need to have. So I'm not sure they're going to be the best choice, but as we said before, the other walkers like the Gorkanaut and the Morkanaut will probably be really solid in it. Like there'll be solid choices. Maybe not for I'm going to play at the WTC level, but
it's going to depend a bit on the terrain, isn't it? But I think at the sort of local level, those things are going to be back in force, right? Which is very exciting.
Yeah, but this is all good.
Yeah, I think so. We'll see how it lands. It feels very strong. It feels very juiced up, and it does. I think the issue, and it's me and Jack both alluded to it. I'm not seeing discernible weakness in it, right? Like I don't see what its downside is. That it feels like it's all upside at the moment, and so
the traditional like design space weakness for Orcs is that they're good on the water, and then they're otherwise like they kind of lose a bit of gas.
They burn out hard and bright, right?
And that's what you play around. So giving them access to something that lets them get around that weakness, essentially, because like from the Orc player's perspective, okay, it's only one unit, but from the person playing against it, you have to assume that every unit's going to have it.
It's exactly that.
You have to measure out threat ranges for a charges, assuming that any unit has assault. Advance in charge. Also assault, I
and
guess.
map ability was always one of their actual limitations, and this throws that wide open, right? Because you just don't know.
Yeah. Which is going to add a lot of potential to orcs in general, which I think is really good. Again, I don't mind. Like, if this wants to be like OP for 3 months, I really don't. That's fine by me, because
it's okay.
Because the sort of patch cycle, I'll call it, is so rapid for 10th edition. Like, it's fine. It can be OP for a little while. I don't care. Like, all players can have their fun, and that's totally fine. I mean, they've already had a bit, but you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say they've been served pretty well, really, across the editions.
Yeah, it's just not a super popular army, right? So
no.
But
I think for me, it's like, if this gets the walkers out, that's quite fun, because we've not seen a ton of the Orc walkers. Like, if you get your Gorkanauts out, if you get your Killer Cans out, I think if it brings those sorts of things into the game, that's fun. If all it ends up doing is its tactical brigade with a newer, shinier, better hat on, that's less exciting to me. And it'll be really interesting to see what the builds are. And I think the concerns here are completely valid. But as you say, Jack, it's Orc, so it's hard to begrudge them having a nice time for a little bit. And we'll just have to see. This is one. I'm not looking at the tower one thinking that's going to immediately need reining in. I am looking at this thinking I'll be surprised if this stays in exactly the form it is over the next 6 months. It'll be interesting to see.
Honestly, right, what the game is against this? So.
Yeah. I think this will be very fun to play against as well.
I say that until it starts shooting me, then I won't be so excited for it. But up until that point, I'll be very excited.
I think this feels like the one I should run against Chris on Fight Night. I think that's
oh yeah, he'll love that.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Jack and I are going to take a little lunchtime break now. We will reconvene to tuck into the Custodes at probably about 1 o'clock. Thanks for being with us so far. Do hit the like and subscribe. Do leave us a comment. We appreciate you all very much. If you want to sign up as a YouTube member and support our grand crusade to take over the world and get a yacht in Monaco, we'd love that too. Wonderful. We will see you again very soon. Don't forget to ponder. Orcs love to ponder. Lowest of men out. Bye-bye.